Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight for another new presentation that we have. My name is Lisa Klein. I am with the Agriculture and Natural Resources team with UGA Extension in Gwinnett County. And I do the In the Garden series. We have all sorts of interesting presentations that we do, some that don't have a whole lot to do with gardening, but some that do. And I thank you all for turning out to see what we have this time. So, a lot of times when we're a gardener, that kind of flows out, yeah, the pun's intended, into other parts of our outdoor area. And that could be creating a water feature. We all know that water attracts wildlife. So that could be birds, that can be pollinators, that can be small mammals, other types of animals. I mean, you might get cats and dogs, that kind of thing. But it's basically an attractant because everybody needs water. And so sometimes, especially now, we're kind of in a drought here in Georgia. And yeah, that might be the only source of water that a lot of animals have. In addition to the wildlife benefits and things like that, of course, humans get a lot of benefit out of having a water feature. Personally, I would love to have one. I don't have the time right now to probably sit outside and enjoy it. One of these days, sometime in the future, I'll be able to retire and maybe then I'll have something like that. But I do love to hear the sound of running water. So we're going to talk about all the different types of water features. Some of them are inside, some of them are outside, and there's probably a lot more out there than anybody would ever realize. I know as I was going through and doing some research on this, I was surprised at all the different types of water features. There'll be a few of them in here that I give you some quick how-tos and some QR codes that you can go visit later. And of course, if you have questions, you can always put those in the chat box. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And if you think of something later, you can always reach out to me via the email address that I have at the end and ask away. And I'm always happy to share my slide deck. So if it's something that looks good to you and you would like to take a look and have your own copy, you can reach out to me via that email address at the end. And also I do record, and these all end up over at our Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel. So you are welcome to go over there after a week or so when I get them up. It's been a little crazy around here because it's Earth Week, so I've been a little slow in getting things up. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So why should you install a water feature? Well, I already gave a bunch of different reasons why, but basically it's going to add another dimension of visual interest in your garden. So if you've put a lot of time and effort into the area around your house and your gardens, or maybe you just don't have a lot of space. Maybe you have a balcony, maybe you have a little back stoop, and you're looking for something that isn't permanent. And certainly it can be permanent, but it also can be temporary. Maybe you've got a lot of stress in your life and you want something that's calming, something that you can maybe do some meditation to or yoga. Running water or the sound of running water is very peaceful. So that's a good thing. We already talked about wildlife habitat and why that's a good thing. Maximizing space. So sometimes it can make smaller spaces look larger. That's both inside and outside. And sound management. So it can drown out traffic sounds. As an aside, I tend to watch a lot of HGTV, and I think it's called Renovation Aloha. And of course, that sounds like it's in Hawaii, and it is. And there was a house that they were doing. It was right next to Interstate 1, which is the big interstate on the Big Island, or on Oahu. And the house literally backed right up to it, and it was loud. You could hear it inside the house. They got a little water feature that they put in the house, and the trickling water drowned out the sound of the interstate behind them. So, yeah, if you're in a really loud area because are maybe your backyard backs up against a really busy road, the sound of water will definitely drown that out. So it's a very good thing. It's an easy green. So maybe you have a pond already. You might think about adding some plants. That would be the next step, I guess. And that can both be plants that are in the water and plants that are around the water. And then, of course, property value. A lot of times, depending on if you invested a lot of money, maybe in a pond, fish, like a smaller ornamental or fish pond, maybe you have a nice waterfall feature that comes down into it. And that could be a fish pond, ornamental pond, or it could be attached to a pool. So there's a lot of different things, but that'll add property value. So what kind of things do you consider before you dive into a water feature? Well, I mean, you can go anywhere from just, $50. Maybe you got a bird bath at a yard sale, all the way up to over $100,000 or more, depending on what you want to put into it. But the rules kind of go, the rules here anyway, kind of go for all of those. So it doesn't matter if you spent $10 or $250,000. You really probably don't want full sun, because if you put that water feature in full sun, you're going to have a lot of water evaporation, which, as I mentioned before, we're kind of in a drought situation, so we want to not do that. And algae. You really don't want to deal with that. So sometimes if it's a natural system and it's not a pool, you're not adding a lot of chlorine to it to try to keep that algae under control. So you want to minimize that. And the more sunlight that you have, the more algae you're going to have, unless you have other aquatic plants in there or some type of a filter system. Not every system is a moving system. So sometimes you just have, a kind of a stagnant pond, and you're probably going to know it. So consider that you want to keep that water moving a little bit. And even if you don't have electricity, you can have a solar pump. We'll talk a little bit about that, and filter. There's a lot of options now. And you really need to kind of think about what's your budget. I know we've all gone to some of these lawn and garden shows, and they will put some really nice displays into the conference hall where you go, and it's like, wow, that's gorgeous. I dream of that. Well, you can make that a reality. Just, have a fund, start putting money into it, and eventually you can get that. But again, as I mentioned, you don't have to spend a ton of money. There's a lot of really neat little water features that you can have where you just plug it into a wall in your house or outside, and you get that same sound, that running water, and it just is very relaxing, and you didn't have to spend $100,000. So first, you kind of have to choose the right site. So I mentioned some sun's good, but too much sun is bad. You don't want full sun. So really, ideally, about 4 to 6 hours is going to be good for most plantings. Now, you can have a shady pond. That's perfectly fine. You put your shade plants around it. But part sun is good. So maybe morning sun if you can. And that will allow you to have some sunny types of plants there. Visibility. If you're going to invest all the money in putting in some type of a hardscape feature in your yard, you probably want to put it close to someplace where you can enjoy it. So that means either coming and going in the front or out in the back, maybe put near a patio. If you sit and have a sunroom or a screened-in porch, maybe someplace near there so that you can listen to it and you can enjoy the wildlife. And then, of course, if you're going to do just a portable one, again, near some place where you can enjoy it. Utilities. So if you're going to put something in ground and it's going to require digging, or you're going to have to lay some electric line or conduit or something like that, make sure to call 811 before you dig. Have them come out and mark all the utilities so that you don't cut any lines. I think some of us, me included, have had that issue before where we've been digging a hole and something was not exactly where we thought it was. I even had a plumber come out who was burying some new pipe and he cut the gas line because it wasn't where it was supposed to be. So it's always good to have them come out and mark that. So drainage, avoid low spots that are going to collect runoff. We have another entire different type of garden for that. It's called a rain garden. So if you do have a spot which collects water when it rains or it flows through that area, that's a perfect spot for a rain garden, a dry stream bed, something like that. Avoid those areas. Look for something that's a little bit more uphill that you don't have to worry about that. And then try to find something with simple um, geography. In other words, level ground. I know that can be kind of hard to come by here in Georgia. And in doing my research, I did find some um, water features where they had carved out of a hillside, put a retaining wall in. They had basically leveled it themselves, but it's going to be a lot easier to do what you want to do if you're in a level area. So kind of think about that. And then distance from trees. So you don't want it too shady, of course, but you also don't want to have to cut into the tree roots. That's never a good idea because then your tree's going to go into decline. So don't do that. Also, don't plant any new trees near because what'll happen is those tree roots will start to grow towards your pond. You may end up having some issues there. And lastly, the debris. You don't want leaves going into the pond. That just makes for a big mess. And you're going to end up putting some type of bird netting over the top of it or something in the fall because it's such a pain. So if you site it correctly, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So let's take a look. We've got a couple different sets of options here. So the first set that we're going to look at are going to be simple to spectacular. So we're going to look at things that start out pretty cheap, are going to be pretty easy, and then go all the way down to the big wow factor. So here you kind of look at a bird bath or a basin, and we'll go into these more specifically. But those are going to be super cheap, $50. No plumbing really needed. It's just usually kind of, you can either put a little solar fountain in there, maybe it's a plug-in, maybe it's nothing at all, and it's just a basin and you fill it up generally, every other day or so for the birds. Very cheap. You may even find some at a garage sale for cheaper than that. You might have a container fountain. So these are, basically exactly what it sounds like. It's got a little pump in there. It's all one piece. It's got a little plug, and you site it near someplace where you can plug it in and plug and play, essentially. So these are typically going to be a little bit more expensive if they're outdoor, probably upwards of 120. If it's indoor, they're smaller. You can get little tabletop versions. Those might be $50, $75. And generally, you can find a little submersible pump. If it goes bad, you can always replace them. So if you find something you like you see here in that little picture, the birds like that, go for it because these are simple and easy. A bubbling rock or an urn, you see that one in the lower left. These can get kind of expensive. So you generally, you've got a well underneath that holds the water. You drill a hole down through the rock and that pump comes up, the water comes up, it trickles over the rock, and then you'll generally have rocks all the way around above the well, and then it sinks back down and then it recirculates. You can plant all sorts of good plants around that. Wildlife value is very high. You'll get a lot of birds. You'll get other animals that come out to drink from it. It's very pretty. You get that water sound. And it's good because it's not exposing a lot of surface area for evaporation. So that's a good option. And then you've got a pond or a pondless waterfall. That's the last one. Those can get as extreme as you possibly want it. You could have something very simple all the way up to something that takes up half your yard. I mean, I've seen some really beautiful ones, and of course, you're going to spend a lot of money on those. So honestly, it probably could go, $50,000, $70,000. I've seen some attached to pools where it's, made to look like it's a whole natural landscape, and those are, 150,000 plus sometimes. And then, of course, a natural looking garden pond. The one that you see here with the waterfall is just a combination of a pond and the waterfall feature. But you can actually have waterfalls that don't have the pond part, and you can have ponds that don't have the waterfall. All right, so let's talk a little bit about each of these. So, bird baths and basins. You can get, something very simple, like you see the one above. It's just a bird bath that attached to a deck railing with a little solar fountain in there. The birds love it. They come in. It keeps the water moving, so you don't have a mosquito issue, and super easy. Probably didn't cost more than maybe 25 bucks for the bird bath, that fountain, maybe 15, 20. So, you're talking pretty cheap. So that would be your lower end. And then mid-range, you can get, concrete pedestals, glazed ceramics, or copper fountains, and upwards of stone, like you see that stone basin there. Solar powered lighting in there. You can add some water plants, some fish if you wanted to. And they're usually super easy. You don't have to do a whole lot. Most of the lighting is probably going to be solar. That little fountain is solar. Really, plumbing and electrical are optional here. You don't have to do too much. So if you're stuck in a condo or an apartment, and maybe you're lucky you have a little balcony or you have a little back step that's yours, you can totally do something like that here, because this is a portable one. You don't have to, worry about it being permanent. It's not that expensive. And you can still get the sound of running water. You can get the wildlife feel. You can get the plants. I mean, the whole thing. It's the lowest entry point, so that's actually a good thing. It doesn't require any skill other than just some, design know-how and how to take care of the plants and stuff like that. And it's very easy. You got to worry about the algae, of course, because generally, at least in maybe a bigger bowl situation, it's not going to be, the water won't be moving, so you may have to deal with some algae there. But if you take some care, it won't be that big of a deal. So this is a good entry level kind of water feature. A container fountain. So these can get very elaborate, but you can just as easily put one together without too much trouble, as long as you do your research. So you can do one where you kind of have a submersible pump. And again, you can buy those super cheap. I have one for like my cats have a water bowl, and I have one in there. So that little pump, when my old one blew out, then I got another one. It was like $8 off Amazon. So you can get something very simple like that. It's just a little submersible pump, and you just have the tubing. And what that does is it just pulls the water in and it just recirculates it out through whatever tube. So here you can see you can get a DIY build, put it all together. You could get a livestock tank and kind of do that. Put a cute little heron in there, some water plants, and boom, you're done. Pre-made kits, you can buy the whole thing in a store, and then it's all basically plug and play initially, or so pretty easy. And you can get some really neat looking ones. And then, of course, you have like this copper one down below. It's fairly deep. You can put some fish in there, and everything is there. It looks really pretty, and you can put some water plants in there. Very beautiful, a good thing to have in your backyard. So yeah, there's some cost to operating it, $5 to $15 a year in electricity. Really not that big of a deal. You could also put the pump on a switch so that it turns on and off. That way, you don't have to worry about using too much electricity. That works better if you don't have fish in there. Or you can just buy a solar pump, which again is very simple and easy, and doesn't cost really anything other than the initial price of the pump. So easy setup. You can do something very simple, or you could put something together, design it yourself, and really kind of go all out. So there's a big range there. You do have to have that GFCI outlet, which that's basically the same thing you would have in your kitchen or your bathroom, and that helps prevent, basically the circuit will shut down if it gets wet. It's very customizable. You can do anything you want, any aesthetic. Cons, not a ton of them, but obviously if it's shaded or too sunny, you can get more algae issues. If you aren't near an outlet, you can always go for the solar pump. Patios, decks, you can move it around. These are mobile. So if you are in a rental house, this is something that you could opt to. You do have to consider what you're going to do in the wintertime, so just be aware of that. If you get a really big one, you may end up having to drain it out so that you don't end up with damage. All right, that bubbling rock or urn. So these are not typically cheap. You can see here, this one is surrounded by a bunch of stones. It is good if you don't want to waste a lot of water, but you still have to buy the stone. It has to be drilled out. You still need the pump and the basin and the decorative rock around it, all the things. You can buy a kit. They do make the kits. Those are going to be a little bit more expensive. So be kind of factor that in. And if you don't want to deal with it because they're very heavy, then consider professional installation. And there are a lot of companies out there that'll do that kind of thing. So that can be kind of expensive, but it's very beautiful, and you still get that real tranquil sound of water running. So about the same cost, upwards of $30 for the pump to be running. But again, you can put it on a timer so it's not running all the time. This one I would say is probably one of the safer options if you have pets, if you have kids and you're concerned that, somebody's going to drown or something like that. When you have this bubbling, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, literally, it's just that little tiny, it's like a water fountain. And then if you turn it off, when if you choose to do that, then there's nothing there at all. And all of the water is stored in a reservoir underneath the stones. So you don't have to worry about that. Very customizable. And you'll get lots of wildlife in there to enjoy the bubbling from the fountain, including pollinators. You'll get butterflies and bees because they can land on that rock surface and they don't have to worry about drowning. So that's a good thing. You'll also get all sorts of little wildlife, mammals. You'll get chipmunks, you'll get birds, you might get deer, raccoons, all the things. So that's a good thing. And it's, again, very safe. Cons, you do have to dig a hole for the reservoir where the water is and go through all the trouble of installing it. So there's a lot of work here. And usually this is going to require a dedicated GFCI line. So make sure that when you are thinking about this, that you factor in the cost of the electrical work that needs to be done. And it's very heavy. So if you are good with heavy equipment and you want to rent that kind of stuff and do it yourself, that's fine. You can do that, or no one's going to shame you if you hire somebody. All right, ponds and pondless waterfalls. So these are generally going to be more expensive. So you can do a small one that's going to be 2 to 4 linear feet of stream. That could be like 500 to 1500. And you can buy forms and you can buy like a kit, I guess, if you would, with the everything included, pump, the liner, all that stuff. Or you just buy that stuff in as you need it. And those are some brands: Aquascape, Atlantic, Beckett, that kind of thing. They sell all of that stuff. Medium, that's going to be like 5 to 8 linear feet, and that's upwards of $3,000. But you can get, sky's the limit here. If you've got some elevation on your property, that would work really well here because you basically kind of dig down the hillside, you get your liner in there. Kind of like what you see here. You don't have to have a pond. You can see this one doesn't even have a pond. It has a reservoir, just like that bubbling urn that you saw, or the bubbling rock that you saw. That water is pumped up to the top, it trickles down, you get the sound, you get the wildlife value, you get all those things, and you don't have to worry about the algae or the other stuff because once it gets to the bottom, it simply drains down through those rocks and it goes down into the vault underneath it, and then it's pumped back up again. So this is a good option. There's a little more evaporation here than you would have on the bubbling rock, but you still get all the value of it, and you don't have to deal with the pond at the bottom, which could have algae or other issues like that, or some safety issues, and you still get all the good things. Your operating cost a little bit more here because this requires a little bit bigger pump. You've got more water flowing, so you have to account for that. And again, you don't have to run it all the time. I've seen, some subdivisions will have something similar to this, and a lot of them are choosing actually not to run it right now because it's so dry here. They don't want to have to pay to keep refilling it. So this one takes a little bit more time, maybe I would say a full weekend's worth of work, 2 full 8-hour days, maybe 2 weekends if you want, but it can really up the curb appeal. And if you have some hardscape with maybe a fire pit nearby and some seating, get your Adirondack chairs, I can't say that, get a book and just kind of sit out there and listen to the trickling water. Very relaxing. Very customizable. You don't, you could have it have 3 linear feet. You could have it a whole lot more, 20 or 25. Depends a lot on the slope of the land. This, again, works better if you have some slope. This is not something that would make a whole lot of sense if you had just a flat lawn. So you can do that, of course, but you may end up wanting to bring in some more soil to make yourself a little hill. Again, highest cost here, professional installation is recommended, but totally doable if it's something that you think you can take on and needs a dedicated circuit. So you're going to have some electrical work done here. Going to need a lot of digging. So maybe consider some heavy equipment or just a lot of shoveling. It's not something that is for probably people that don't like doing a lot of that. And you may need a building permit in some jurisdictions. So just double check on that. So here is a step-by-step. This is not this is not the instructions on how to do it for every single pond waterfall situations, but it's just so that you can kind of see all the different steps that you need to go through. And I did put this handy dandy QR code link so that you can see a little bit more in detail and how to calculate and do a lot of the other things. But choosing your right location, we'll just kind of go through it. Don't put it under a tree for all the same reasons that I suggested for not doing it with any other water feature, because you've got roots that you don't want to cut. You've got roots that you don't want growing into that the liner and causing damage. And then you also don't want to deal with all the leaves in the fall because that's just a big mess. So try to site it away from trees. Ensure you have access to electricity, and if you don't, you're going to have to probably lay a line. And then visibility. So take advantage of it. I mean, if you're going to put all the money into it, then you probably want to be able to sit nearby and enjoy it. So consider having some flat stones there. You can, put together a little flat patio, maybe a little pergola. You can put a little reading area there just so you can enjoy it. And then next, plan the shape and the height. Start sketching, use AI, come up with a bunch of different designs. There's all sorts of articles that are out there that will give you all sorts of different ideas and thoughts and all of that. And now you can take a picture of the area and you can upload that into ChatGPT or some of those and ask it to use this photo to come up with different designs for a waterfall. So some thoughts there. And then try to keep, if you're dealing with a very small yard, try to keep it modest in size. You don't want to tick your neighbors off. So then you're, of course, going to get your materials together. So you're going to buy the liner, or you can get these little basins. big box stores sell them, and you can use that if you're going to have a little pond associated with it. Get your pump. Again, I, listed off some of the manufacturers, tubing, for the pump to circulate it back up. And then, of course, all the hardscape, the rocks, the boulders, and you're going to need gravel, sand, that kind of stuff to put underneath the liner because you don't want things puncturing that liner. You're going to dig that basin out, so you're going to have to get out there and start shoveling. And either if you're using a liner, that's probably a little easier and a little more forgiving. But if you're using a hard plastic insert, you'll have to make sure that's leveled out, and you may have to backfill in some around it, that kind of thing. And then install the underlayment, which is going to be usually like a sand to protect the liner, pressing it into the corners, that kind of stuff, and then secure it. And that's where all that extra rock is. So rocks can get expensive. So just be aware of that, and you're going to need a bunch of different sizes. Positioning your pump. You may want a deeper area. So if you're not going to have fish, that's not as big a deal. You can have the beautiful water plants, and you don't have to worry too much about that. Attach all the tubing and all of that stuff. And then after you get that all working and that works fine, then you're going to build your waterfall structure. So you got to have your rocks. This one's kind of artistic, so you can just kind of plan the little stepwise riffles and runs, all that kind of stuff, and stack them to how you like it. And make sure you're hiding all of that tubing and stuff so that it's accessible, but just underneath the rocks so it's easy to find it if you need. And then create the spillway. So you're going to use the flat stones, the water will pour over that. And then, of course, you get the sound. Fill the basin, test the water flow. Very important before you bury everything. So if you've got the tubing and all of that, test it to make sure it's not leaking, test it to make sure that you're actually getting the flow that you want, all of that. And then fix anything you need to, and then come back, hide the liner with the rocks and the gravel, and then plant your plants around it, and boom, you're done, and you can enjoy it. You can put some solar lights around there, or if you want to put some other plug-in lights, you can do that, or hardwire it in. All right, so moving on, natural looking garden ponds. So these are kind of meant to just be one with nature. You plant these, you kind of let them do their thing. Generally, you're probably not going to have a pump on these. You can if you want to move a little bit of the water, but yeah, it's just meant to be kind of a little natural system. You might get some frogs in there. You might have some, because sometimes people are like, how did I get fish in here? I didn't put any fish in here. Well, that's because birds and other things might bring them and accidentally release them there. So don't be too surprised, but you may end up with fish in there. Or you could put some little mosquito fish in there, gambusia. Those will help take care of any mosquito larvae that you have. But yeah, you put in some rushes, you put in some reeds, maybe some pickerel weed, maybe some swamp iris. And over time, they just kind of naturalize in and around the area. And it looks really nice. And, it's just a bonus for your backyard. You could add some seating. It's kind of a nice thing to be able to do. I have an area out back that for years I've talked about. This would be perfect to put a pond in, but I've just gotten more and more busy, and yeah, it's just probably not going to happen. Not here anyway. But yeah, I mean, try to site it nearby where you can enjoy it. So you can see we've got everything from very natural, which would be the top left, to down at the bottom, kind of a very formal pond. And then you have just kind of a naturalized one in a smaller backyard with rocks and everything around it. And it doesn't look too natural, but you could probably put a few minnows or something in there, some gambusia or maybe a goldfish or two, and they would do quite well, and it would be kind of fun. So this is kind of an alternative here, and we'll talk a little bit more about some other types also. So this is kind of what you're looking at for a pond in your backyard. If you're interested, Lowe's has a really good tutorial on how to put a water garden or a pond or small water garden in your yard on their website. Very easy to follow, good instructions. So basically, you just have to make sure you're going to have some kind of a pump to do the heavy lifting of moving the water around, and that will help a lot with algae. Some type of a biological filter. Sometimes people forget about this. You can incorporate extra sand, you can incorporate extra gravel, and have like a little wetland feature that you pump water through. That will naturally filter that water, and it will the nutrients that maybe are in there from fish or whatever you have will be taken up by the roots of the rushes or the other wetland plants that you have. A good place to see this in action if you are in the Gwinnett County area is the Gwinnett Environmental Heritage Center. You've got something called Sterner Stream that runs underneath the building. It's a good LEED certified building. It's a very pretty building architecturally, but it's also very interesting. They have a line that runs from the F. Wayne Hill water treatment plant, which is on the same property. It's a very large tract of land, and that runs all the way to the Environmental Heritage Center, and it comes out, runs down a large chute and then comes down to what they call Sterner Stream, and it runs underneath the building. You can walk all around it. They've added large mats of vegetation, aquatic vegetation, and those uptake the nutrients that are left in that treated wastewater. So they use those nutrients, and as it moves through the stream, you have more and more of those little islands of vegetation soaking up those nutrients. And then as you get done towards the end of it, you even have bald cypress and some other types of plants. There's fish in there, there's frogs, there's a little algae and things like that, but it's meant to be more of a natural system. So it's a very good replica of what a natural system is. And you can see the difference in the water from where it comes. And sometimes there's more algae towards the front of it where it comes in, but you can see as it moves through that a lot of those nutrients get taken up by those plants, and they're very effective at doing something like that. So that's a thought. You can make it a two-part system and have kind of a little wetland area and then a pond. And that is a very natural system. So, these are kind of just the things that you need, the liner, the underlayment, plants and fish, if you're going to do that kind of thing. Plants are helpful that if you're going to have fish, because those plants will help use the nutrients from the fish waste. So if you don't have some kind of a biological filter there, which is advisable if you have any aquatic life in there, you can use plants to help with that. Here's some plants for your pond, some ideas for them. And this is just kind of I'm just tossing them out there. But if you want something that's very specific to the Atlanta area or to the Georgia area, there's a newsletter that was put out by the Cherokee County Master Gardeners that have many more plants than this and actually go through some of the steps of choosing plants specifically for water features. And it's actually a pretty good newsletter. So I've got that QR code there if you want to check that out. Okay, more ideas for water features. So as I mentioned, there's other options other than just the standard list that I gave you. So these are kind of different ones. These might be a little more artistic than what you thought about, or maybe you're like, oh, that's really high end, but actually not. You can do some of these yourselves. So we'll go through all of these. So you could have a rain curtain or a water wall. And this can be done very simply. Again, you could purchase them. They do make kits for this, and they do make custom. There are places that will build these for you, but you can do it yourself too. You can actually go get the tubing, basically like for a fish tank, and you can put, the holes up at the top, and you can run a little pump and it runs up. You could go buy a remnant from one of the granite companies and put that up against a fence, frame it in real nice. You have your tank basically at the bottom, and the water comes up, it gets pumped up, and then it trickles down. or falls down and you get the sound of rain. You can see the one in the top right. They've basically got a well underneath that collects that water and then it's pumped back up and in, and then it trickles down like it's raining. But there's no open water down there. So, yeah, you're able to walk underneath there if you want, or wildlife can use it, that kind of thing. You can see it can get very artistic. You've got a fountain down below. That's an expensive one, but you don't have to do that. I mean, you can do some of this yourself. You just have to be a little handy, a little DIY. So really interesting, dramatic focal point if you have a really pretty garden. This one's great if you're trying to drown out sound. So if you live near a busy road and you don't want to hear that, maybe you got some really obnoxious neighbors and you don't want to hear that, this is a good one for drowning out with sound. And it does work well in small spaces. I don't know too many people that in a quarter-acre yard are going to complain if they hear the sound of dripping water. They will if they hear a barking dog, but not so much for the dripping water. So cons, you're gonna need some good filtration. You don't want hard water to streak your wall or to clog up your nozzles. We do have hard water here in Georgia, so just kind of keep that in mind. You may need to do a little demineralization. And there's going to be a lot of water evaporation here because you have kind of a wide surface area and it's trickling down. So keep that in mind. Patios, entryways, meditation gardens, privacy screens, lots of options here, and can be very expensive if you're doing something very customized, but also can be really done cheap on the DIY if you know how to work all of that stuff. All right, moss wall with water. So I know we all think about these beautiful little streams down in a fern valley, and it's nice and shaded with the trees and the canopy. You go up in the North Georgia mountains, you can see this in action. So you're trying to mimic that in a very shady backyard. Uh, this picture, the lower left picture, comes from Italy. So this is totally doable, especially if you have a stream or something like that in your backyard, but you can replicate that. You just have to make sure that you're using some kind of a moss that's going to do well in the situation. It's got to be shady. This is a shady option. Some type of a well down below. You have to have a material, usually rock of some sort, that you can put that moss on, that it can attach to. So you're going to have to get some rock, probably stacked rock or something like that. And yeah, get the moss growing, and then you have the water that's trickling from the top and down. So the same concept here. You have your tank down below where the water goes. You have a pump that pumps it up, and then you have a tube up top. All that water kind of comes out and it trickles down, and then it recirculates. And then you can always have filtration if you need to. It needs constant moisture, and it's not good for full sun because shade or moss does not like that. So just keep that in mind. And you can do it on a very small scale if you wanted to. I mean, it could just be a very narrow area. So, but rock can be kind of expensive. It kind of depends a little bit. You might go out to a construction site, see if they've blasted, and you can collect some of that rock. Lots of options here, but of course, sky's the limit. So you can you can spend a lot of money on this if you want to. All right, water drip sculptures. So these come in little tabletop models. You can see the one up there in the top left, and you can get them all the way up to the really big ones. I don't personally know anyone who has something like this in their backyard, but you can easily pick up these little tabletop models. I bought one for $35. And, generally they're not going to last a long time with that $35 one, but yeah, you see what I'm talking about. There's all sorts of them out there. If you go on Wayfair or online, you can search, there's tons of them. And they don't have a lot of water use, especially if it's just kind of a drip. The more water it moves, the more it's going to be evaporation, but it's that sound, the sound of dripping water. And there's generally no splash. So especially with the tabletop models, it needs constant moisture or it's going to dry out and that pump will go bad. So if you don't fill it up, that pump will burn out. Ask me how I know. I have cats, and they decided they liked drinking out of the bowl. And yeah, well, I wasn't paying attention and I burned the pump out. So if you have a cheap one, thankfully it was only 35 bucks. In that case, I couldn't get to the pump because it was all part of the sculpture itself. But if you have some that have separate pieces, you could again purchase a $7 pump, submersible pump, and just plug that dude in and it can continue on. So sky's the limit. You can get really super cheap here. If you get pretty metal ones, price is going to be more. Amphibian micro pond. So I loved this when I saw it. I love the one above. That one you can buy on Etsy. You can buy anything there that's, I mean, moss terrariums, amphibian ponds, I mean, all sorts of cool stuff. But you can make your own. You can go purchase a terracotta pot. You can go purchase a plastic pot at Dollar General and make your own. You can see the kind of rough directions on how to put that. You can make them very big, like the one down on the bottom right. And you follow the same rules that you would for a fish pond, but you're not going to put any fish in it, of course. And it's going to be shallower generally. So it's going to support frogs and have tadpoles out there. You might have some algae. You could put some lily pads out there. Yeah, it's okay. And it's supposed to look more natural. So the only thing is you probably would want to site this closer to trees because this is more shady, and you do want that leaf litter because that's all going to fall into that pond, sink to the bottom, and that's where all those little tadpoles and mayfly larvae and all those things, that's where they like to live. So you're providing a good microhabitat for them. And this is a good thing for schools. You could do something like this out in a courtyard. Obviously, you want to be careful about allowing kids access to it. You don't want them to fall in. But these are generally going to be a lot shallower than some other type ponds. And you can always go for the tabletop or the pot method, put a little duckweed in there, and you can put it on a table, and it's kind of cool to look at. Rain chain waterfall. So you can buy them, like you can see a couple options here where there's a pump and it pumps up and then it drips down through the rain chains and you get the sound of the water. That sounds very relaxing to me. I would love to have one of those. Generally more expensive. The ones on the top two are going to be pretty expensive, but you can make them also. Rain chains you can get for anywhere from like 20 to 50. Make your own. So you can see that down below they've taken bricked in a tank. They have a pipe, probably run the pump and the plastic tubing up. They have another copper tube up at the top with holes in it. It pumps the water up, and then they've hung rain chains right below where the water comes through on the holes, and it just runs down through and it trickles down and then ends up in the tank below. And I mean, you get the beautiful sound of rain anytime you want it. Next, a pollinator puddle station. So this one's super easy, super cheap too. I mean, you can buy them, like you can see those very colorful, pretty ones that you can just kind of stick here and there throughout your garden. They've added some glass marbles in there and put water in there, and that's so that when the bees or the butterflies come to drink or feed, that they have something to land on and they don't have to worry about drowning. That's a big problem. That's why if you have a hot tub or a pool and you have someone with bees nearby, you'll end up with a lot of dead bees usually because there's no place really good for them to land and to feed. So yeah, just got to be careful. But you could do that with a saucer from a terracotta saucer. You can set it up. You could use an old bird bath, put some gravel in there, like you see there. Lots of options, very super cheap. Uh, you just want to make sure that you don't have a lot of standing water, that the water is in between the gravel, because then you get mosquitoes. We don't want those. So super cheap, great for a butterfly garden, good in a school garden, and very useful for pollinators. patio water table. Here we're starting to get a little bit more high end. You can see they've got a nice table up above. They've run a stream right through the middle of it. I mean, that's pretty cool. The other one on the other side, they've got the water comes into through the table and under the glass, and then it pours into the pool. Yeah, you're talking high end here. Probably not something that most of us are going to have in our backyard, but I mean, you could DIY it pretty easily. It wouldn't be too difficult. Again, it's simply a pump. It's a tank of water and tubing. And the rest of it, you can kind of decide what you want to do. So you just have to have the furniture or whatever. So needs to be level, but if you're a good DIYer, there's a lot of options here. Your water and fire bowl. So most of these are the ones that I saw were actually surrounding pools. So the water comes up and you have the natural gas usually that's right at the surface with the kind of like with a gas stove. You have the vent there, and then usually just some type of lava rock or something around that, and then you have the water that bubbles up and pours out through down into the pool. Very pretty. But they do also make fountains that you can have. There are some tabletop ones, and there are some other ones that you can put in your garden. You can see that here. You have something similar, but it's just meant to be in a garden, and you have the pool down below. The water comes up. You have the gas and I think this one has glass. The light, the water, not cheap. Definitely not cheap. Not ideal if you have a lot of little kids or pets around. So this is something that you probably would consider more high end. The carnivorous plant bog. So this is going to be something that you can do in a pot. You can do it in an in-ground area where you've got some kind of a liner, and then you put the different layers in there. Yes, there are a lot of layers that you have to put down. You've got to build those up. Those bog plants cannot live just in typical potting soil. So I do have a QR code there for the Brooklyn Botanical Garden that will walk you through the steps for how to grow carnivorous plants in a mini bog. And it tells you how to do all the different layers. So if you want to do it in a pot, a terracotta pot, a metal pot, you can get fancy and have an in-ground one with a liner. And then you see the floating one. That's pretty cool, right? I would love to have something like that. But they're not inundated. I mean, they can be, but as a rule of thumb, they are not wet feet all the time. But they're very cool. They're very pretty. So many different varieties. You can buy them online. There's a guy in Snellville here in Gwinnett County that has his backyard in suburban. He's just in a neighborhood and he raises them. He does the tissue culture in his garage and he will sell them. He usually opens his backyard up to sell those once a month in the summer. First time, I believe sometime in May, he'll what is it, Atlanta carnivorous plants. If you're interested and you live in Gwinnett County, you can always email me. I have that. I bought some stuff from him. But yeah, you can buy them on Etsy. You can buy them at a lot of the plant shows. Really neat. Very cool. Very, a little hard to take care of. So do your research first. But once you understand how to take care of them, very interesting. Very interesting. All right, koi pond. So this is basically your pond situation, but with fish. So fish add an extra layer to this because you have to have filtration in there and you have to know how to deal with the water quality. So fish put a lot of waste out. You have to have some filtration. I suggest adding in some plants also, but you need to keep checking that water quality because if you're going to invest in koi are very expensive. I mean, this you could buy. I when I worked for DNR, they had a donation of 10 koi to the Carter Center in Atlanta. And they wanted us to come out and just kind of check the fish for health and that kind of stuff. So we checked the water quality where they were supposed to go, and everything was cool. But they told us that one of the fish was $30,000. Yes, I know there are some that are even more than that, but yeah, you see what I'm talking about. You don't want to lose these guys. So if you want a koi pond, do your do your research. learn how to take care of fish. You probably want to start with goldfish first. They're all in the same family, this carp. But learn how to take care of a smaller one before you move on to the bigger ones. There is a koi club in Gwinnett, so you can always join that and learn from other folks that are doing that. But yeah, they're cool, and it's always kind of rewarding when you see these big goldfish that are out there. Kind of fun. So here's the step by steps. So basically the same thing as what you're going to do, except for a regular pond, but you're going to have multi levels here. You have to have places for them to hide because you'll have aerial predators. So in this case, you're going to have probably some overhanging rocks that they can hide under, that kind of thing. And you'll want different levels, as I mentioned. So how to build a small koi pond, consider, and again, got to dechlorinate the water because they can't tolerate chlorine, and add some plants, that kind of stuff. And this will run you through roughly how to do that. But again, I have a link there for you. Happy to share the slide deck so that you can have that later. All right, growing lotus in containers. This is kind of a neat, cool one. Not very hard at all. So you can buy these seeds. Etsy will sell them. You can buy these and they have all sorts of different colors. Just have a little bit of patience because it can take some time. This one works in full sun. So if you have a full sun balcony, this would be a perfect thing. You still get the really cool looking live plant that's in a bowl. But you don't have to worry about if it's too sunny or too shady. You don't want shade. You actually want more sun. And it's great for Asian inspired gardens. So it's kind of a very peaceful thing. And here's how you would go about doing that. So choose your bowl. You get the right kind of soil. Again, not just typical potting soil. Plant your tuber. If you don't want a tuber, you can try from a seed. That's how most of the little kits come. You have to scarify the seed and all the stratify, all that kind of thing. Follow the kit directions. You're going to plant it and then you're going to add water, but you're not going to inundate it. You want it to start growing, and you can add more water as that greenery starts getting taller and taller. And then here we have a bunch of indoor water features. This is just eye candy. So you can get bubble walls. Here you've got a hotel that has a really fancy looking waterfall in it. You've got a really high-end house over here that has a water feature in the house. You've got one of these bubbling bowls that you get the sound, and you can put it in your house. It's a not battery, sorry. It's a plug-in, but it's portable. And then you have the rain wall, but on a miniature version. And then you have the little fountain. So you can get different sizes. You can get tiny little tabletop ones. You can get bigger ones like the bottom right. Plug that in your house and you get the same sound. You get what I'm saying. So lastly, start with your space and purpose. Choose a feature that's going to fit your house, your yard, fits your preferences. If you're not a homeowner and you're renting, that's okay. You just get a portable one, or you get a pot that you don't have to plug in. Very simple. And pick your maintenance level. So if you're not comfortable with all the maintenance, taking care of fish, all that stuff, just don't. Just go with the tabletop model, or go with one that you just plug in and leave in the corner of your living room. Small features can make a really big impact. So if you have a lot of stress and you come home and you get a little tabletop model and you put it near your couch where you sit and watch TV, you'd be shocked at how much more calm you'll be after a hard day at work. You come home and you hear that bubbling water. It really does work on you in a really good way. It adds a lot of calm to things without having to really do much. So just start there if you're thinking about it. Design for function and flow. So make sure that you're jotting down all the information. You can buy the kits or you can hire somebody to design it for you if you've got the money. But consider the depth of the water, if you're going to have fish or no fish, pump size, because, obviously the bigger the feature is, the bigger the pump needs to be. Splash zones, visibility from your home. Are you going to put additional hard hardscape around it so that you can sit nearby and listen to it. I mean, there's a lot to think about. Supporting wildlife. There's a lot of animals that get a lot of benefit from this. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to throw that in here. We're always trying to talk about what would be good for pollinators and animals. And in suburbia, you have way more animals than I think you do. So having a water feature would be an excellent way to provide water for animals, especially now when it's so dry. You'll have a lot more coming into your yard if you offer them water. And maintenance, keep it clean. You don't want your neighbors complaining that you have a mosquito zone over there. So just make sure that you're doing all the right things. Budget, as I mentioned, you're not going to be spending $100,000 on a water feature for your house if you only make $60,000 a year, right? So many of those features you can make your own. There's lots of places where you can find plans online and they walk you through step by step. So take it easy, take it simple. Again, most times it's just digging a hole, lining it correctly, put that liner in, figure out how you want it, have that pump, have the tubing. If you're not having wildlife, fishes, then you don't need that filter, but you're just going to recirculate that water. So it's a simple concept. It's just how much more in materials do you want to go and make it, how elaborate do you want to make it? And basically create your own oasis. And you can do that indoors. You can do that outside. You can do it on a grand scale. You can do it on a little scale. It just really depends. But either way, it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to try. So if you've maxed out on your garden or you don't want to do too much now because you don't want to plant more things, get that indoor water feature. Why not? All right, so that is basically it. And let's see here if there's anything that anybody has questions about. So let's see. All right. My pond made with a liner, 3 goldfish, and live through the pond freezes. Yes. So if the deeper you need to be, or it's better to be deeper when you have live animals in there, fishes. So above ground, if you have an above ground tank, it needs to be deeper and you have to hold a good bit of water. You may consider a livestock heater when it's really super cold out. Bees and love it. Yep. Yep. Located near my driveway and patio. I have a solar water feature. Yep. And a plug-in pump. Also some nightscape lighting. Yeah, lighting is definitely nice. And pond needs some. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, very nice. I like it. Got some ferns in there. Japanese painted ferns, like the flamingo. Nice. Okay. If anybody else has any other questions, it doesn't look like any, but you can drop them in there. This is kind of just what's out there? What can I do? And to give you a little bit of you know, a pep talk about you can do it. So, you don't have to get super elaborate. You can have your own little pond. You can put all sorts of good stuff. I have a koi pond. We'll be adding plants. Oh, will adding plants disturb them? No, adding plants does not disturb them. It depends on how big it is. The plants actually are helpful because they will use some of the nutrients that are left over from the fish waste. So that's the founding principle on aquaculture. So if you have plants that you're growing, like, in this case, lettuce or something else, the fish are in a tank nearby. You feed the fish, the water, there'll be waste in the water. That water then goes and circulates along the root system for the plants. It feeds the plants because the plants use the nutrients. It filters the water out, and then that circulates back around to the fish tank. So it's kind of a closed system, and it needs to be in good balance for aquaculture. But the premise is the same if you have a koi pond and you want to add in some aquatic plants. So you can purchase aquatic plants on Etsy. You can purchase aquatic plants on Amazon. You can go to a local plant nursery center that carries aquatic plants. There are, a lot of like Gwinnett County has a koi club. They also sell plants. So there's a lot of different places to get them. You just need to be plugged into the community where you can find the best deals on them. But no, that doesn't disturb the fishes. They actually like that. That gives them something to hide under, in and around, if you have lily pads or something like that. And that's actually more protective for them. They don't have to worry about aerial predators as much. Anything else? Okay. Let's see. Somebody popped something up there. I liked plants in big pots in my large koi ponds, plus some are floating. Yes. So there's different types of aquatic plants. I did not really go into that here. You're going to have some submerged. Some of those will root down at the bottom and grow up to the top. You have floating. You have emergent. Those will be partially submerged and kind of floating up at the top. And like lily pads float along the top, but they'll anchor down at the bottom. So there's a lot of different types of plants. Generally, what folks will do is you'll buy these plastic containers that will hold the corms or the rhizomes of the different plants, like the lilies. Whatever you've got basically, but that's what holds the rooted part. And so that is down at the bottom, and then if you have floating, it'll come up and then it'll float on the top. But yes, you have pots that are in the water. That's where the plant grows from, not just randomly, because you remember you have a liner, you don't have soil or anything down there, so the soil is going to be in your pots. But yes, you would realize that, I guess, if you were going through and reading on the websites that I provided. But yes, that's generally what you're going to do. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so this one will probably be up next week. I think Earth Day is finally about out of the way. It's a little crazy. This weekend is nuts. But then things calm down quite a bit. So this one will probably be up next week. So thank you all for attending. We had kind of a light number of people today, but we are moving into the summer months. So probably not as many people. Maybe they're all out in their garden. So anyway, that's about it. I hope you have a good evening and we'll see you later.